You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And thank you for joining us. I have with me Allison Dagney. And Allison has a story that will curl your hair. By the way, my hair is curly. Will curl your hair. Wait till you hear what she has to say and how she finally got out of a relationship that was just ridiculously unhealthy. And she has a book. We're going to talk about her book. Allison, welcome to the Empowering Process podcast.
Thank you, Gail. I am so happy to be here with you and share my story and offer any sort of, tidbits of information and guidance of things that have helped me and how I've been able to empower myself. And I'm really excited. So thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So we're going to have a conversation about the N word, the narcissist. And there are so many out there. There are women who are narcissists, men who are narcissists. It's not a gender specific thing, but it really is a person who can make you feel worthless, make you feel maybe stupid, and make you feel totally dependent on them for your very breath. And Allison really got into that type of situation until she woke up. So Allison, let's talk a little bit about how you got into that situation, what it was like being in the middle of that kind of life, and how you finally realized that this isn't right.
Okay, so I'll take you all the way back to when I got into the situation. I was 19 years old and I was really young and I really wanted to be in a relationship and I was trying to find the man of my dreams. And I was set up on a blind date with a guy, and we were both, in our freshman year of college, and hit it off immediately. From what most people would understand, there was a lot of love bombing going on in the beginning. It was a very quick, very fast-paced relationship. Everything was moving really fast, and he was doing all of the typical things that anybody would dream of, right? Like buying me things and complimenting me and telling me I was the perfect person for him and I was the love of his life and soulmates and, we're going to be together forever, like all of that stuff. Plus, on top of it, buying things for me and doing sweet gestures and nice things, and so all of this happened really quickly. And I didn't know anything about the world. I was 19 and I literally just went head first. Yes, let's be together. I wanted to be with this person. And what I didn't know was that was a tactic that a lot of abusers, narcissists use in order to trap you into a relationship. And then later, end up abusing you emotionally, psychologically, sometimes physically, sexually, all of that too. So that's how I got into the relationship. Because of love bombing. And love bombing is one of those things that I really am passionate about teaching people about. I teach my own children about it because I think if you know those kinds of things up front, it's a lot easier to just walk away at the beginning, but if you think this is, a soulmate situation or love of my life or whatever, it's likely that you're going to fall into those traps. So that's how I got into it. And we were together and married for about 17 years. We were together for a total of 20 years and we have 3 kids together. And in that relationship, it was extremely difficult. The number one thing I would say was a lot of confusion. I was very, very confused during the time that we were married because I felt like I was the problem. I had done everything wrong. I was the one who needed help. I was the one that was too emotional. I was the one that was crazy. I was the one that needed to go to the doctor, right? So even if I begged him to go to therapy with me, the answer was no, because I don't need therapy. You do. You need to go get help. You need to get this figured out. You need to fix your problems. And then maybe our marriage will be better. So, like you had said at the beginning, there's a lot of this like devaluation, condescension. I always felt like he was treating me like he was my dad. And I would say to him, stop treating me like I'm a child. Stop treating me like you're my dad. And he was like, well, then stop acting like a child, stop being immature, and I won't have to treat you that way. So yeah. So then it was always put back on me. It was always that, that projection. So that the time that we were together to the time that we left was just full of this. Now, I'm not going to say there weren't good times, because there were times that we had fun together. There were times that I felt good and happy, but this was always an up and down. It was a roller coaster. It was good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. It was never consistent. And I was always, the thing that was consistent was that I felt like I was the problem. So that was the thing that was consistently consistent. And I felt really low about myself. I felt like I had no self-esteem. I had no self-worth. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And no matter how hard I tried to please him, to make him happier, to get better, to do more, it was just like that banner at the finish line would just get moved back further and further and further. I could never reach it. I literally tried so hard to make him happy and do all the things, and it just was never good enough. So it was really frustrating, and I write about this in my book, how I ended up getting out of this relationship was someone alerted me to this and told me that this was emotional abuse and I might be dealing with a narcissist or a sociopath. And I thought, no, absolutely not. I could never, I would know better, right? I would never end up in a relationship with someone like that. And this is a person who I consider to be covert as far as the abuse. And this person was very sneaky, never said a cuss word, hardly ever raised his voice at me. So of course, when those things would happen and there would be a lot of criticism and a lot of devaluation and a lot of, silent treatments and like all the gaslighting and all that stuff. And I felt pushed back into a corner, right? So then of course I'm going to react. And of course I'm going to get upset. And then I was made to be, again, the crazy one. So that's what it was like in the relationship. There was a lot of financial abuse as well. Just me always feeling way inferior, never feeling like on an equal playing field with this person. And it was really, really difficult. So when I realized that this was happening to me and the person who alerted me and told me, I didn't believe it. I was in denial at the beginning. And then I finally decided, well, maybe there's something to this. They had planted a seed basically. So I started looking into it. I started researching, and then my mind, I felt like exploded. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I couldn't believe the dots that were connected and the boxes that were checked. I was like, oh, and then I thought, I got to get out of here. Now I know what has been happening to me. And it was like all at the same time. It was a horrible realization. It was very sickening. It was scary. It was sad. I was angry and frustrated about it, but it was also really liberating because I felt like, oh my gosh, like it wasn't me. Like it's somebody abusing me. So yes, I'm not saying I'm not going to take any accountability because of course a marriage is a two-way street. However, if you're being abused, it's a totally different situation, right? We're not dealing with two normal people here.
No, what you're dealing with someone who is a master at manipulation and control. And honestly, I believe many narcissists or people who have that type of behavior don't even realize that this is how they're controlling a situation in order to hang on to love, or what they think. So it's not like someone says, well, I'm going to be a narcissist and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. A lot of them don't even realize that this is how they behave, and this is how they manipulate and manage situations to benefit them. But there are also people who don't take responsibility and accountability. And what happens is they find someone like you, Allison, and quite honestly, I was a doormat in my first marriage, right? Me as well, that you are willing to go the extra mile to do whatever it takes, right? And take on responsibility and accountability when it's not even yours to take on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can 100% see what you're saying about them not always knowing. I mean, in some cases, I think maybe they do know what they're doing, but in a lot of times it becomes this like habitual thing that they've just been doing their whole lives to, like you said, and I'll use the word supply because I feel like that's what it is. Like they need to fill some sort of emptiness with a supply inside of them. And so this has just been a coping strategy or a tactic or whatever you want to call it in order to achieve that. So in some cases, maybe they can even see, like if you say to them, like, you did this to me, here's proof, here's evidence that you cheated on me or you hurt me or whatever. And they can't, like you said, can't take accountability for that. Some of them know that what they're doing and they just are unwilling to admit it. And others, don't even realize there's anything wrong with it because that's what they're trying to do is get that supply. So
Right.
it really kind of depends. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's in many cases, and not all cases, so let's not be too general, right?
Yeah.
In many cases, it is really someone who is so vacant and void of love. They don't know what it's like to have a side-by-side healthy relationship. They do believe that control keeps you there. Okay, I found this thing, this person, right, that feels something in me, and I'm never going to let her go. Right. I'm never going to let you go. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to build a cage and make it so that you have to stay. It really is creating a dependency, right?
Oh, absolutely. I felt like that was huge for me because he would make me believe things like that I was incapable, that I didn't know what to do, that I should rely on him and lean on him. And so then he became sort of the authority in my life and the authority on every decision that I made. So then what happens is I'm doubting me. I'm doubting my ability to make a good decision on how we need to handle the kids. And I'm saying, well, I don't really know how to deal with money and I'm really not good at numbers. So I'll let you take care of all the finances. And then I become completely dependent on him and don't have any real say or ability to make decisions or anything like that because I was completely dependent on him.
Yeah. Yeah. And so so you fortunately had a friend who planted a seed, which, God bless her for showing up in your life, and then started doing some research. When you realized that you were in a situation that was unhealthy on every level possible, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, financially, right? What steps did you take to figure out how to get out of there?
Well, that first and foremost, I'll say, like, because anybody listening, if you're listening and you're trying to make a plan to get out, because planning is so key, right? Planning is important. If you can't plan, that's one thing. Like if you're like, your life is in imminent danger and you got to get out now, obviously you don't have time for a plan. But in my case, I did. I had a lot of time to plan. I had about 3 months. I set a goal. I was like, I'm going to be out of here by, it was like the first week of January. I was like, and I had 3 months to figure this out. So I had set a goal and I turned off my Wi-Fi when I was searching because I didn't want there to be any sort of like things that pop up or search history or like anything like that. I didn't want to tip him off at all. I was so afraid of him. I didn't know what he was capable of. I mean, he had told me, I didn't write about this in my book, but he had told me one time when we were watching TV about, I don't know, it was like CSI or something like that. And I remember him looking at me and saying, I could bury you in the backyard and no one would ever find you. And I didn't know what to think of that because he said it so seriously, but I was like, kind of laughed it off like, but that was always sort of in the back of my mind. It was like one of those things that I mean, I was afraid. Like he'd never even really, like, I'd never been punched or pushed up against a wall or like anything violent like that. But it still made an impact on me and kept me in a position of fear. So I was very, very careful. Everything I did, I was sneaking behind his back. When he went to work, that's when I went to work. He went to work and I was planning. I was pulling records of all of our financial documents, screenshotting everything, printing everything out, getting copies of birth certificates and social security cards and insurance policies and taking as much stuff as I could and putting it in a safe place. I'd only told a few people that I was even doing this because I had to make sure that they wouldn't leak it back to him. So it had to be somebody that I really trusted. And really those people are people that hated him. So I knew that those people were not going to alert him. I couldn't go to like a friend, a mutual friend or something like that, because there was a risk that they would let him know. So I was doing everything that I could do, thinking ahead as far as like, what am I going to need? What absolutely am I going to need to get out? Because I knew I wasn't going to be able to tell him that I was leaving. And I was too afraid to have that conversation with him in person because I thought I didn't know what he was capable of. And I also was worried that even if he didn't do anything physical, that the psychological manipulation would keep me from leaving, that he would be able to twist things around and turn it back on me and tell me maybe with crocodile tears that we need therapy or whatever that might be. And I just was not willing to even entertain any of it. So I did all this stuff to plan. I set up a place to go. I had utilized all the resources that I had. I was saving money. I was like, I didn't have a job. I was a stay-home mom. So I had a credit card and all of that, but I couldn't just go, put things on my credit card. He would know, he would see it. Right. So I was squirreling away money and hiding it any chance I got. Like if he had cash and I borrowed $20 to go or took $20 to go to the store, I would buy something very minimal and keep the rest and pocket it. If I had like to go to the store for a friend or something like that, I would have them pay me back in cash and I'd use my card and I would keep the money. And I also did things like, I would buy gift cards at the grocery store. So I would buy gift cards like a Visa gift card or something like that on our credit card, like using our money. And then I would just keep that gift card for myself and then lose the receipt so he wouldn't know that I had purchased a gift card on it. So that way I had some money in case I needed it. Like I didn't know if he would shut down the accounts or get me off the passwords or whatever, so I was just thinking of all the things I could think of to set myself up for the greatest success. And I even got a hold of attorneys and therapists and was talking to everybody to kind of build that team around me so that I would have the greatest possibility for success. And then I ended up telling him in an email, and you can read about this in my book too, but I ended up telling him in an email that I was going to be divorcing him. And I wasn't even there when it happened, when he got it, because I was just too scared. And I wasn't willing to take that chance for myself. And I understand too, that the greatest, danger for women when they're leaving is within the first 2 weeks of escaping. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to put myself in that position. So I gathered up the kids from school and went to my mom's. And then I had informed him that I was not going to stay in the marriage and he could get a hold of my attorney. So there's a lot of things that go into that. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And I think if you can plan, you absolutely should get all the resources that you can to set yourself up for the greatest success. You don't want to miss it.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you had therapists lined up, you had attorneys lined up, all of this lined up. You mentioned for those who are not capable of having the time to plan. I mean, there are the YWCA, there are crisis centers that you can go to where they will get you to a safe place, and out of danger. But you are absolutely right. The first couple of weeks, I mean, that's the time to lay low and not have contact, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I think is important too, is if you suspect that you're dealing with somebody who has high narcissistic traits or has been abusive to you, or you've identified patterns of behavior that are abusive, to not tell that person, to not say, oh, you're a narcissist, or, oh, you have a personality disorder. Like that's really key. Because what's going to happen, there's a lot of things that could happen, but one thing for sure that will happen is they're going to turn it around on you, tell you you're the narcissist, tell everyone else that you're the narcissist. And it's not going to change anything, right? So even if you tell them, it's not going to make them all of a sudden be like, oh, wow, you've given me this realization about myself. Maybe I should go fix myself. Like that's not going to happen. So what's the point really? It would keep you safer to not inform them of this reality that you've just discovered. And it keeps you in a better position strategically, because now you know how narcissists operate. And I know people who are listening, if they've been in an emotionally abusive relationship or they've experienced a narcissist, they know everything about narcissists. They know all their tactics, they know all their tools, they know all the things they do. So keep that to yourself, right? Because now you're in an advantage. They don't know that you know about what they really are.
Right. And so I'll share. Like I said, my first husband definitely was a narcissist. And I can remember one night he broke down and literally pulled into himself into like a fetal depression because he didn't want me to do whatever it was I was doing. And I didn't know what to do with this, right? And I called a friend of mine, and this guy says, "Oh, Gail, please just leave, just walk out and leave him alone. Let him suffer in his little fake world." And like, so this guy knew what was going on, and it never really enlightened me as to
Yeah.
what was happening,
Yeah. A lot of times you have to come to these realizations yourself. It was the same way when that person told me this was possibly a narcissist or a sociopath or abuse. And I was like, no. But when I started doing the research myself, I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, you're right. I was wrong. And now I got to figure out how to get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly worked with a guy who's giving me a ride home one night, and he pulled over to the side of the road and gave me a lowdown about what he thought about my husband. And I was like, no, he loves me. I don't know what you're talking about. Absolutely not. Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. The seed was planted at that time. And that's when I started going, what is going on? What is going
Yeah.
on?
Yeah. And I think, that was a big reason why I decided to write my book. That was a revelation for me. And I thought, wow, I have this like really nice house and my kids are in a really good school and we had plenty of money. And from all accounts, everybody kind of looking from the outside in would think everything was great. We had a great life together. We had a great marriage. And I thought, if I am experiencing this, how many other people are out there going through this exact same thing that I am, right? Because it was so sneaky. It was so hard to detect. It wasn't like in your face where, at some points I almost wished he would have cheated on me or wished he would have like to give me an out, like I almost wished there would be something that I could literally pin it on because you're in such a state of confusion that you just keep trying and trying and trying to make things better and it just never gets any better. So that was a big reason for me to write my book because I thought other people have to know they're not alone and that this is real. And I wanted it to be like read almost like a novel where it's a memoir, but read like a novel so that people I can actually be in it. Like they can actually feel what I was feeling, experience what I was experiencing. And I even have people who like moms of daughters who are being emotionally abused, who now have read my book and say, wow, now I understand what she's really going through. So that was really the goal, was kind of raise awareness and then help validate people and give them the inspiration and hope that, yeah, you can get out of here just like I did.
Yep, absolutely. Now you had mentioned you only told a couple of people that you trusted.
Yeah.
I will tell you at one point, again, I wasn't leaving yet, but things were so bad, and like you, whatever I did, no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. I reached out to his brother, who I adored, and said, I need to come and stay with you for a couple of days. I need to get my head straight. I need to figure out what's going on. And he turned around and told him.
He did.
Oh my gosh. And that's when, I just completely shut down. It's like, I can't trust anybody. And I had no clue what was going on. I
Yeah.
had no clue what was going on. And our breakup was, and it was in a fight and it was pretty bad, but I don't know how long I would have stayed if that didn't happen. So I'm thankful it did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a similar experience, not, my ex-husband's brother. So he was married and that was my sister-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely adored her. We got along wonderfully. We were the best of friends. And I actually had to cut her out when this happened because I knew my relationship with her would never be the same because I couldn't share with her the things and the truths that I knew about him. So, it's interesting when you start thinking about the people in your life and who you can really trust and who you can't trust. And I got mutual friends and family and people who you thought were on your side, who are no longer on your side and now are like kind of doubling down against you. And it's a really, really difficult place to be, especially, like right after. I call that time of my life the swamp. It was so horrible. It was, notes through the backpacks, from him that the kids brought home. There were people texting me constantly, people talking about me and, kind of saying the negative, typical things that you would think about a person. And, it was a really, really difficult time. And then you got to put in the kids are upset and you've got court battles and you're trying to divide money and assets and things like that. It was very, very, very difficult. So I completely understand the challenges that people are dealing with when it comes to this, just like you.
Right. And you cannot do this alone. I think, I know for me, it really was finding that one or two people that had my back, right?
Yeah.
As you said, who trusted you, who I could have a conversation with and bounce options off and don't, that won't say, Gail, this is what you need to do, but will just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just be that mirror, because what happens is when you do that and you have someone who's not going to, you don't want someone to argue with you and say, yes, you're right. You want someone who's just going to ask, and so why do you think that's happening? What do you think you can do about it? Right. So that you can start to get distance and look at your situation like a reporter and go, holy crap, because you get that emotion out of there because you love this person.
Yeah.
Right. And you think they love you. And so this has got to work. Love conquers all. Guess what? It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and I love that idea too. Like I even wrote a couple blog posts about how when you're getting a therapist and you're getting an attorney and things like that, to have someone there with you if you can, like somebody to hold your hand. Because here's the thing, if you go into an attorney's office, you're feeling pretty scared and pretty desperate at this point. And you might just be like, okay, and take the first person that even shows any interest in you, right? That you feel like, I need some support. Right. But if you take a friend that's sort of unbiased or somebody who you trust, they can think of things that you haven't thought of because you're in a heightened emotional state, right? So you might just be quick to pull the trigger and say, yes, here's my retainer fee. And I actually had that problem at the beginning because I didn't have anybody going with me. And I ended up having to fire this attorney within 3 months because I knew I made a snap decision quickly because I was scared and I needed somebody. And if I had to do it over again, I would have taken someone with me and asked that person to be sort of a, I don't know, like a person of clarity, just to ask questions and say, are you sure about this? And, not to tell me what to do, like you said, help me be able to make the decision on my own. Because when we're in a narcissistically abusive relationship, we don't feel like we can make any decisions by ourselves. We might not even know what we want to eat for lunch that day or where we want to go on vacation. Like we just don't have any sense of identity when you've been sort of put down that much and condescended and degraded. And it's just like, you don't trust yourself at all. So it does help to have somebody with you so you can start trusting yourself a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is that feeling, it kind of creeps up, right? It builds up. And honestly, one of the things that I did was because I thought I was the cause, I was the problem, that I was, wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't clean enough, wasn't a good enough mother, wasn't a good enough what, all of those things. I'm like, yeah, maybe I am. I started keeping a calendar, a diary as to everything that was going on in that relationship. And then went back and read it like it wasn't mine. And that's when I realized, what is going on here? This is not right. Right. I'm not crazy. This has been happening. This is not my imagination. This is real. And then now what?
That's really interesting. I just thought of this. I actually wrote about this too. I did something similar. I remember I was kind of at my wit's end and I just felt really awful. And I got out a piece of like legal pad paper and I remember, and I still have it. I wrote down like 3 pages of all the things that he hated about me and all the things that he complained about me. And I just wrote it out. And then when I was like you, like looking at your calendar, looking at it, being like, oh my gosh. And it was after I did that, I was like, I think I need to divorce him. Right. So I actually thought this through my head. And then I went to my dad and I had a conversation with my dad about it because I trusted my dad. But my dad's filter was different from mine, right? My dad's filter was, you don't get divorced, you work everything out, you got to try harder. Right. So I showed my dad even these 3 papers, and, he was quite shocked to read the stuff, but it was still his filter that, like, oh, it was the worst thing that ever happened to him to have a divorce. So he didn't want that to happen to me. Right. But to me, I'm sitting here thinking the worst thing in my world right now is being in the marriage. So his advice was to go back and work it out. So I almost did. Like, I literally almost did,
Right.
until that friend alerted me, like, hey, this is abuse. Like, you might want to think about that before you decide to, like, go all in on fixing your marriage. And I'm so, so eternally grateful to that person for opening my eyes to that.
Well, and for being brave enough to say something, shortly after that divorce, I was, on my own with the child. And I had a friend who was in a very, very, very bad situation. And her husband was running around on her and, hanging out at bars and blah, blah, blah. And I finally told her, he's seeing this person. And he called and he gave me such a ration. Because you're separated and you're divorced, don't try to break up my marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you that not too long after that, because of the stress that she was under, guys, don't let this happen to you. She died of bleeding ulcers in her bed. Yes.
I mean, there's
Yes.
such a correlation between your emotional and psychological state of being to your
Yes.
physical body.
Right.
That's why when you feel nauseous or you're having anxiety, right? It's all that vagus nerve that's connecting throughout your whole body. It's like, hold on, what's going on in your mind is actually affecting what's going on in your body. You got to be aware of it.
Right. Right. And it was when she passed, I mean, I'm like, all right, I am never going to let this happen again. That, if I were in that situation again, I would be adamant, I wouldn't be pushed back. Right. I would be presenting the evidence, and not be shut down. And I still was, I guess I was in I call it my doormat phase. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think you had this too, but I had a lot of, I had physical symptoms while I was with him in the marriage. Like, one, I had major anxiety. I was being medicated for that and for panic attacks. I had horrible migraine headaches. I had TMJ from grinding my teeth at night. I had double vision, eye twitches, stomach issues, weight loss. Like, there were so many, like, physical things because of where I was. Like, I was in this awful place. I mean, no wonder. And, like, after I left and started healing, like, I don't have any of that stuff anymore at all.
I'm in
Just
better condition physically now than I ever was.
Yep. I know, right? Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So tell us a little bit about your book. So your book is the Tears
When Tears Leave Scars.
When
Yeah.
Tears Leave Scars. I love
Yeah.
there's a picture, and if anyone is watching this versus listening to this, the picture of her book, the cover of her book, with a tear coming down the face of the model, literally scarring her face.
Yeah. Yeah. And, ultimately that's the worst part about this is, there are no visible bruises. There are no like scars when it's emotional abuse, right? It's all unseen. Like, you could just be walking out and you have no idea who's being emotionally abused, who's gone through this kind of thing, but it's way more people than we know. So my book is a memoir. It's a true story that takes you all the way from the beginning, like I talked about here, all the way to the end, to my escape and my transformation throughout that process. Because the big thing, and you'll read this on the very first page, is that I wanted to kill him. Like, I wanted him to die, or I wanted to kill him. It was an obsession of mine. I felt like if he died, my life would be so much easier. Right. And I come to this realization, this epiphany at the end, so I won't ruin it for you, but it is very inspirational in that it shows you that this is possible, right? You can be married for 20 plus years to someone, be in this sort of awful swamp, this place where you feel completely discouraged and like nothing could ever be okay again. And it really can. I came out of this and I'm so much stronger. I'm such a better person. And actually, truly, I'll just tell you, Gail, like, I wouldn't change it. Like, I wouldn't change it. Like, as much as it was horrible to deal with, like, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it weren't for that. Like, I've grown so much and become such a better human being because of all the trauma that I had to go through.
Well, it's like the diamond is getting created, right?
Yes.
And pressure creates desire for something different.
I
right?
completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. So my book's available on Amazon and paperback, Audible, and Kindle. So
Awesome. So Allison, thank you so much for being so clear, so succinct, so vulnerable with your story. It is one that I know more people share than you could possibly imagine. That the perfect, picket fence and the perfect life, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And if any of you are behind closed doors and even have a hint that this isn't right, do some research, seek some therapy, ask some questions. And if it is a narcissistic situation, even slightly, find a way out and make a plan. Thank you so much, Allison. This is Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. If this inspired you, please do let us know. And if you have a question because of this conversation, do leave a note and we'll be happy to get back to you. If you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, please share it out to them. This is very important information. And again, Allison, thank you so much for your time.
thanks for having me.
Okay, everybody, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.